All right, this is Insights in Action. We have for us Whitney Conda, an orchard manager, having worked in horticulture for 20 years, who understands the pressure points of labour skills on productivity. Let's give Whitney a round of applause. I reckon we can do better than that in terms of a round of applause. That was actually subpar. Our next panellist is Justine Stevens. So let's give Justine a robust round of applause. Much better. Justine is General Manager Skills and Advice at the Food and Fibre Workforce Development Council Muku Tangata, who has developed Te Mata Rara... How do you pronounce that? Rauranga. I should have read this beforehand. A shared platform for consistent and accurate vocational education and workforce data at an iwi regional and national level. And our final panellist today is Genevieve Griffin-George. Let's give Genevieve a round of applause. Nice. Genevieve is a grower and entrepreneur, having identified the challenges growers face recruiting seasonal labour, developed a tool designed for seasonal hiring. And of course, we are missing the Honourable Andrew Hoggard. Thank you, Air New Zealand, for that one. So just a reminder, any questions or put your hand up when we come to it. Shamabel, in your hands.
Thank you. It's not often I get to do the asking of questions. I'm usually on the other side. But Justine, maybe we'll start with you. With all the work you guys have been doing, what did I miss? What are the big issues on the labour and skills side that this audience needs to know about?
So from everything that we've been seeing in terms of, and our role is basically to look forward and go what's happening with the workforce across all of the food and fibre industries, and look at what the skill needs might be into the future and how vocational education and training can basically swing in and support your industries. So within that, we are expecting there to be, after that period of sort of labour constraint, some growth in the horticulture workforce. We're expecting most of that to be a slightly different skills mix in terms of it will be some of those higher level roles, those more interesting sort of skill sets. So in a sense, really good news story. There's going to be way more interesting careers opening up for lots of people in food and fibre. But we're not seeing similar growth in training numbers. In fact, it's going the opposite direction. So enrolments in training have been dropping off. So that investment in your people, the investment in sort of how they're building those skills, we're not seeing horticulture in particular taking advantage of what might be out there to help build them. And that to me is really worrying because, as Shamabel alluded to, there's a lot of changes going on in the vocational education setting at the moment. Opportunities to go and upskill may not be there in the future. It's really driven at the moment by who shows up. And if your industries don't show up, if you're not sending people to go and get trained, people will just stop providing education in those areas. And at the point where you might need to reach for those skills in the future, they might not be there. So that'll be my starting point.
Thanks, Justine. I thought I was depressing.
Yeah, sorry. Data nerd, not good news story.
Genevieve, I thought I might ask you about the seasonality question because I was really surprised by just how seasonal the employment was. I mean, even though I've worked in the industry, I just didn't realize just how thin it was in the off-season. Are there things the industry can do in terms of reducing some of the seasonality or responding to that uncertainty of those labour market pressures?
I don't think that seasonality is a bad thing. When we think about growing kiwi fruit, there are so many tasks that we have to do in a short period of time. What we're seeing is that growers are getting bigger, they're getting more and more hectares, and therefore they're needing to do more work. If we think about the way that we used to do work, is it would have 1 or 2 people and we'd have them pruning for 2 or 3 months. And so what you'll see is that the continuity of the fruit is very different from the time in which you start and then the time in which you finish. Where seasonal workers come in is that you have the ability to pump up your workforce and then go, can we actually, back to your productivity piece, can we actually get everything pruned in a shorter period of time, increase their quality of fruit, and then move on to other areas in the business? So I think it's actually a good thing.
Whitney, what's your view in terms of the productivity in the sector? I mean, looking from the outside in, the numbers look pretty good, but what does productivity actually look like when you're sitting inside of a business? And what are the kinds of things you can do, particularly on the people side?
I work for an orchard management company, and part of our business is dealing with management clients. So we have to be productive to be successful. Being productive, we can have productive people, but we kind of need to look at different ways we can be productive, and that is maybe through our innovations and our tech, but also remembering that those innovations in tech aren't a silver bullet. They're not going to fix everything. So allowing our people to upskill and grow, to manage and maintain that tech at a different level rather than them feeling like they're being replaced by all this tech and upskilling, tech and stuff like that.
When you invest in new technology, are you having to upskill your people to be able to take advantage of the technology?
Oh yeah, of course, every day. You don't know what you don't know. You've got these amazing products coming on board, and yeah, of course.
Well, I'm curious then, because now you're recruiting people who have more skills, different skills. What happens if those jobs are seasonal and you have to hire them again in 12 months' time?
Yeah, that's the stuff we have to deal with.
Well, I guess that's the thing that I worry about, because the retention rate kind of speaks to that, right? Yes, I understand the flexibility through seasonality, but you're still investing in these people's skills to work with specific types of kit and technology, which are improving over time. So that means the people working on your orchards are getting more and more skilled over time, and they become more rare over time.
Yes, absolutely.
And onboarding is really, really important, right? So how do we onboard people better? And there is no one way of onboarding one person. Everyone has a slightly different way of learning. And so where I see an opportunity for us in technology, and what we're doing specifically within Pick Me, is looking at how we can streamline that onboarding, but also make it individualized to that specific person that's doing it. So when you're in group scenarios and you're doing onboarding, just like in a presentation, you can spend an hour and everyone goes, yes, yes, ticks the box.
Yes.
And they haven't actually absorbed all of that information, because we all learn differently.
It takes time, right? You have to learn by doing.
Exactly. And so if we can start using tools that allow them to be able to learn in the way that they need to, whether that's translation, whether that's using videos, whether that's using AI, and I'll probably jump onto that at some point, but being able to have things like your contract read out loud, or actually understanding what an SOP is and having that explained to you, so that we're actually upskilling people as we onboard them. And what it means is that they're prepared to do the job properly, because they actually understand what it is that they're doing, and it sets them up for success, and it sets us up for success as business owners. We're not always going to get it right, because sometimes you've got to get out there in your gumboots and give it a go, and until you've done it, you don't know whether it's the right fit. But we need to be able to streamline that so we can get more people through to be able to trial some of those jobs.
It sounds like you're saying we need to invest in the ways that we do things, not just keep doing things as we are. There's some really good questions that are coming through. One of them that I really like is, allowing time to train is difficult. How do growers make room for this, to make room for training? Any of you, really?
I think it's how do you make time to invest in anything that's important to your business. One of the things that we've looked at is the return on the investment from training, both for the learner, and for that it's really, really clear. They see, better wages, better job security, less benefit receipt, less ACC, so they get a really good return from their training. But it also delivers good returns to the business. So businesses that hire people with qualifications and training do better. So it's not rocket science, really. It's a straight up business decision of going, if you want to see better returns, treat this as any other asset, any other business investment. Make the time for it. Don't treat it as a fluffy nice to have just because it's got training in there. It's not the sort of the fluffy part. It's the core part of how do you boost your productivity.
I suspect the challenge is that the payoff is in the future and uncertain, but the cost is present and clear. And therein lies the issue in terms of making time, making space for it, is you can see the costs that are up front, but those returns might be in 12 months' time or 2 years' time. And not everybody has the capacity maybe to have the confidence that it will turn up.
And I think that's why a lot of the focus in training is on how can you do shorter packages of training to make sure that people, you basically accelerate that return on investment. What's the training you need right now to give you the skills that you need right now? And that's a lot of the focus.
Yeah.
But it's also, I guess, going back to your retention thing, it's how do you retain people? And if you've got seasonal labour, how are you building that core set of skills among the people who are going to be looking after them? If you want to speed up your onboarding processes, yes, technology helps, but actually having people who know what they're doing to onboard them and running the operations is just as important.
Okay, I have a really good question around leadership. So how can the produce industry capitalize on the role of skilled migrants in leadership and management as demand for change leaders in the industry grows? And I think it's not just about the workers at the front line, but this is workers and skilled people who are coming in across the leadership and change management side of things. Are you seeing that? Are there opportunities? Is it, is there barriers to people coming in? I have no idea about this stuff.
Coming into leadership?
Into the leadership and change management side of things for the industry, coming in from outside of the country.
No, there's some wonderful programs out there for people coming into the industry that want to get into leadership roles. There's some really, really cool stuff happening on lots of different platforms, whether it's through Kellogg or through the Rural Leaders. Hort New Zealand's just got the most amazing one at the moment with emerging leaders and stuff. So in terms of
You don't think that's a problem? No.
No, I think what we'd need to be thinking about is who is paying for it. So you've got your corporations that have their staff and they're willing to they can see their return on investment. It's the mum and dad orchards. It's, do they make the decision to send Joe Bloggs to put on a rural leaders course, or do they put that investment into the oil leak that's happening in the tractor in the shed? I think that's.
There's a good question around seasonal work here. So seasonal work might be good for the growing, but for people to put down roots in communities and grow lives here and not move offshore, they need year-round work. What is the solution? And I think that's kind of what I was speaking to, is that seasonality creates a lot of uncertainty for some people. It's suitable for some, but it's unsuitable for a lot of people, especially in the current climate where there's a cost of living crisis. As I showed you, people are doing without a lot of the basics. There is poverty in New Zealand, and unfortunately many of them are our workers. So are there ways of, I guess, creating continuity and smoothing out some of those seasonal highs and lows so people can make a decent living?
Honestly, it's really tricky. I know there have been bits of analysis done previously to look at, actually, could you match up the different seasonal peaks within an area to give more year-round employment? And most of the answer was no, not really. So I think you are looking at potentially other ways of managing that. But, for some people, maybe seasonal is okay. And New Zealand is a fantastic place to come visit or come stay if you're a migrant like myself. And maybe it's a case of, actually, that's great, but just how do you also build the permanent workforce as well?
Sure.
I'll add to that, like in terms of, you may have your peak season of the six weeks between date A, date B. It's that collaboration within, maybe not our industry, but like us working with the wine growers to collaborate with them to sort of maybe spread the workload, share the workforce. I think that's a really good tool to use, and that's something that we do in our company.
Yeah, I've heard that in the dairy industry where they've been trying to work with local partners to see if they can kind of smooth out it doesn't take it away, but it moderates some of that impact. And I guess it's all about what can we do locally with connecting with each other, the collaboration part. Did you have a comment to make, Genevieve?
I think, we've trialled that on our orchard. So we're a relatively small kiwi fruit grower, and we've got relationships with apple growers and hop growers in the region, and we have tried to share our staff with some of them, but it's the staff's choice. It's not about us placing them to work with another employer that they're not happy with. And so that's the bit that we do. We go back to our staff and we go, okay, we can see that we've got 6 weeks worth of work. We really want to keep you, but we just don't have the size or volume. And we will call around and speak to other growers and say, hey, here's this. And then we'll give them the option to be able to move on if they want to. It keeps them loyal to us. It means that they know that we care about them and they're not just a worker. There's someone that's really important to our business. And we've got a few New Zealanders that are doing more of that and working in our orchard.
So there are ways of working around, but it sounds quite time intensive.
We're small, so we can do it. But
Yeah.
when you're a large orchard, which I know a lot of people out here will be, is that it's just, you've got 300 people. It's a bit harder to place them than 4 or 5.
But, you told me before that AI is going to solve that for us, right?
Oh, I think there's a part of that can doing that. I think, in your last slide, that's kind of, around leadership and what that actually means and what it means for us in this room. I play with AI quite a bit. How does everyone else plays with ChatGPT? Put your hand up if you're playing with it in some way. Okay, cool. So I did something really interesting yesterday where I said, I'm talking to AI all the time. I said, can you please tell me about myself? Tell me what my skills are, but I also want you to tell me what my gaps are. And so I want everyone in this room to do that post this session and see what AI comes back with. What's useful to know is that it knows a lot more about you than you know about yourself, but I see it as an opportunity for us to grow. We've been given this challenge of having to double our exports in a short period of time. We can't continue doing the same thing. I like diagrams and Venn diagrams like you. The Johari window, have you guys heard of that? Yeah, okay, cool. It's around improving self-awareness. It's a 2x2 matrix. I should be able to say that. And there's one particular area in it. So you've got your open area, and that's to do with your known self, and then things that are known to others. And then you've got your blind spots. So that's things that are not known to yourself, but also known to others. And then we've also got the hidden areas, so things that are not known to others and not known to self. And the unknown bit is the piece that I'm most interested about. How do we work out what the unknowns are as quickly as we can so we can start implementing and thinking about what those strategies might be and not doing it alone?
Yeah, that investment in leadership, it sounds quite difficult for a lot of people because it feels like you're asking to train myself. But the reality is to be able to make the most out of your business, out of your people, you actually need to invest in yourself too. And you have to give yourself permission to do that. Genevieve, you talked a little bit about how you've been thinking about induction and training and things like that. Do you test people after the induction to prove that they do know, or do you do it by observation?
We get a lot of feedback from workers themselves, but mostly from orchard managers. The best piece of feedback is when you get the eye rolling. And they go, why are you telling me this again? I watched this video at 3 o'clock in the morning with my jammies on. I get this. And so that for me is success. But I think it's an ongoing piece of work. Like what I think we tend to do is we try and overload people with information and you just can't absorb that much. And so I think it's about us as an industry working out when we spoon feed that so people can actually understand what it is that they need to do the next part or learn the next task.
Any thoughts on that, Whitney?
I think them giving us feedback on how we onboarded to them is really important. I think that's something we're starting to do more and more of now as well. What I like to do is I'll give them, I know what I know, it makes sense in my head, but I may not make sense to them, so I get them to then teach me on what they absorbed, and if then I can then prune the tree the way I think it should be pruned, then the system works, right? Don't know.
Nice. It's a shame that Minister Hogarth is not here because this question is, I think, will be quite good for him. How do we address the disconnect between industry and training, especially when the training system is constantly in a state of flux, as it has been over the course of the last 10 years, right? We seem to go this way, that way, whatever. So you guys are in the industry, and Justine, you've been working very hard in the space. Any thoughts in terms of how we kind of reduce that disconnect between industry and training? You mentioned that our training numbers are falling, which is a bit of a risk.
Involving growers more in training and how it's delivered, how it's worded. Some of the stuff that our guys are learning or working on at the moment, yeah, sometimes I don't agree with, but under different contexts, and yeah, sure. So I think involving growers more in how we're training our people, I think would help a lot, go a long way towards that. Yeah.
So how are you guys involved at the moment?
Currently at the moment we are signing them off, so we have weekly meetings, we watch what they do, we have it signed off, we map what they're actually reporting on, how they're describing it, and then working with them to make sure that they understand it in a broader context and in the jobs that they're doing in our industry, or in cherries. That's my jam, cherries. And then just that keeping those communication lines open, making sure that if they're not sure about things, that they have that pathway to us to talk openly and honestly, and just making sure that they know the company's why.
Yeah, I'm curious to know why there is training that's being designed and delivered that's not necessarily fit for purpose. Are you involved in giving that feedback to the providers or the creators of the content to say this is not actually working in my context?
Wouldn't say not fit for purpose. I think there's aspects of it that are wonderful and really, really good, and it teaches the people doing those courses not only context of what they're learning, but also other skills that come along with that learning as well. Yeah, did you have anything to add to your thing?
I mean, I would just put a plug out there to go. At the moment, there will be a review of the horticulture qualifications coming up, and that is your opportunity to get involved. So if you do want to see better training, if you think the kind of things that are in the current qual set need adjusting in some way, shape or form, then get involved. My qualification colleagues are always on the lookout for people from industry that they can co-opt to go, just tell us what sort of things you want to see, and we will do our absolute best to include them. Yeah.
But my suggestion would also be to ensure that in those qualification bodies, there's always an industry representative and a worker representative who's there, so that you're getting those perspectives. One of the biggest challenges that we have in the education system, a lot of it is dreamt up by people in Wellington, and that cross-testing doesn't happen often enough. But it's the iteration. It's not so much the invention of it, it's how do you keep it relevant over time, because the context is always changing, like with the technology and all those other things that you mentioned, Genevieve. That gap between industry and training is actually present in almost every industry that I deal with, but one industry that's been really engaged in this space and doing a really good job of it is construction. So they've actually been a little bit more mature in the space. That's been my kind of feel of it. They've been very involved. They're very involved right at the kind of levels, all the way from the kind of stewardship level to the qualification levels to the feedback loop to make sure the funding is secure and those kinds of things. As a result, they've had pretty good outcomes in terms of completions.
Yeah, and forestry would be another food and fibre industry that has much stronger integration of your job progression, what's expected of you, and the training system. And it's the same with any sort of ticketed profession where if that's the approach you're taking, sure. It may not work for everything in horticulture. It's really, really hard if you've got a seasonal workforce. You can't always go, right, we need you to be fully qualified in everything before we can let you loose. But there are ways of strengthening those pathways for at least some of the workforce, even if you're just looking at who are your permanent staff, who are the leaders.
Yeah, the trainers, right?
I think training, when I think about training, I don't think about it just as being practical skills, like being out in an orchard, learning how to prune, drive a tractor. There's so many other skills that we require in horticulture. We've got scientists, we've got agronomists, we've got marketers. And I think that we need to do a better job in horticulture around promoting that there is such a diverse amount of roles and opportunities that make up our industry, and why wouldn't you want to be part of it? And one of the beauties is starting from the beginning, understanding the land, the produce, what it is that you're doing. That gives you a platform to be able to really understand what is the next thing that you might want to do. When it comes to when I talk to young people about why would you want to be part of Hort, why would you want to be in this industry, it's one of the only places that you could work somewhere for 2 years and be in a management role. There aren't many other industries where that's even possible. We're crying out for people to come from different sectors and different industries to contribute into what it is that we've got. We don't have a problem with productivity. We have a problem with trying to draw in people to help make us do what we're doing better. I want kids to go, yeah, when I grow up, I want to work in Hort. I think that's, when we get to that point, we've been successful with our training and how we talk about what it is that we do.
More people should do school cert Hort, is what I'm hearing.
I want to build on that. Like, I'm real passionate about, like, someone said go early. Who was that? Philip, talking about go early, like in that succession. Like I think, I don't know, like we focus on that high school age, and I don't know about you, but when I was 15 years old, if I had a day out on an orchard for a field trip, yeah, no schoolwork, right? So why don't we go a bit earlier into that primary age, really mould those young minds and create a new perception of the industry, but not just for them, for their parents, for their whānaus, for whoever's driving those younger children's decisions, getting into the communities, engaging with the communities. I think just increasing our perception at an earlier level will go a long way to making those kids go, yeah, Hort, yeah, rather than finishing their summer job, picking fruit, going, right, off to a real job now. Like,
can I make a suggestion though, Whitney? To have an open mind about who might come into our industry. The construction sector has the biggest wins with people in their late 20s to early 30s. So I don't think we should rule out people who are looking for lifestyle changes, that ability to progress, to have responsibility and those kinds of things, which I think your industry can offer in spades. That beginning of the pipeline is very competitive, but when you're disillusioned with life and you still got to look after your family, your industry has a huge amount to offer. So all I'm suggesting is maybe we should keep a little bit of an open mind about where we pitch our effort, because it might be some of those other people. There's a few questions here, and we don't have a lot of time, but I just want to kind of pick these up because I think they're really good questions. The first one is really around that question of turnover. How do you retain talent and reduce turnover of staff whom you've invested into training and PD? And I think this is always a bit of a risk, right? That you're training these people up, but will they stay and will they kind of give you the benefits? And like, how do you kind of approach it? Or doesn't it matter because everybody needs the same kind of skills?
I mean, I think there are two things. One, training does lead to better retention. So in and of itself, it's a good investment if you're looking to retain. The other thing is just the people that you're hiring in, they're coming from somewhere else in the sector. Most of your new entrants will come from somewhere else in the food and fibre industries or within horticulture. And the more you train your people, the more you're building that stock of good people who will eventually sort of, all swim around the same sector. So yes, you may lose some people, but your sector will gain overall. And if everyone is training, everyone is able to hire better people as a result. So yes, it's a bit of a long game, and I'm sure it's more in the economics wonky world than in the practical sort of like what am I investing in now. But
this is what I tell my Dairy Women's Network conferences around the country. So you train your people so much that they can't earn as much anywhere else, so they can't go. You train them into staying. Yeah. Maybe in the industry, but maybe not in your business.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if your learners are getting sort of better return on that training, if they are earning those wage premiums that we do see coming through in the data, then they are more likely to stay because they're able to capitalise on it.
Involving them in a lot more decision-making and autonomy as well, like sharing your why, but also listening to their thoughts and opinions as well, like gives them skin in the game, then they can sort of progress along with you.
But what I'm hearing is good leadership, good management, good
100%.
culture.
All comes down.
There's a couple of questions here that are quite important, I think. One is around how important is government-funded formal education to the sector? It might be a little bit more for you, Justine, because formal education kind of sits in a specific place, and it's not the only thing, but it's important for many of those roles that you talked about, Genevieve. Yeah, one of you, any of you. We've got 2 minutes.
I would say formal education is important. It is that way of going, yes, there's plenty you can learn from other people who are just on the job with you and as part of being there, but that means you're stuck in the same set of skills that are available to you on site. formal education gets you the new thinking, the things that you haven't thought about from elsewhere. And it gets you that sort of more rounded set. It's also, quite frankly, a way of tapping into the funding that's available from government. Other sectors are doing it. They're getting more out of the pie than you guys. So I would encourage you to sort of go, how do you make sure you're getting your share?
Well, and to me, this is the thing, because I hadn't realized just how productive the sector is per hectare. I think we should be asking for a bigger share of the money than everybody else, because we're making better utilization of the resources of the country.
We're talking about, formal training in economics, formal training in science. Like, these are not formal training in just one specific area. We say what? There's so many different parts that make up our industry that, yes, I'm totally for formal training. Like, my background's in architecture and spatial design. Woo, great for kiwifruit, not. But it's given me a completely different perspective when I come into the industry, and I ask different questions. And I wouldn't do that if I was trained in just one way of thinking. And so, bring on formal training, but people that come from different areas.
I think, to me, formal training is a complementary skill set. Like, so much of what you learn from others, from being in the workplace, being all those interactions, whether it's formal or informal, or through mentoring, those are really powerful things. And there's so much that happens in a workplace that is really, really important and powerful. And there's one final question. We've got 16 seconds. We'll just do a quick whip around. What about the fact that money isn't the only driver for people? People want to own their own businesses, and it's difficult to do in Hort because of the investment required. How do you keep people invested in your business? With great difficulty. I think the answer was, in the dairy sector, is not everybody is going to become owner, but you need to create enough pathways for people to have enough. And that's about having those really open conversations about what is it that you can create for them in terms of opportunities, and whether that's enough for their sufficiency. And for most people, not everybody wants to become a farm owner. Many people want to become a manager, they want to become something else, and having that open conversation can quite often mean that you can, in fact, deliver the things that people want. Not for everybody, but absolutely for a lot of people. So look, we're out of time. It's a shame that Andrew wasn't here, because I would have thrown in some curly questions on the vocational education stuff. I had prepared them, but I don't want to piss you guys off with those. But so thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Justine.
Ask him over dinner.
And thank you, Genevieve, for answering these questions.